Tassos Haniotis joins me now. And Tassos, you are now a special advisor for sustainable productivity at the FFA. How important is that position for you? What voice does it give you?
Well, first of all, it gives me the opportunity to keep doing things post-retirement, which is a major thing. I mean, you need to keep your brain active. It also allows me to continue having a contact and networking in Brussels, but at the same time, the topic, which is sustainable productivity, allows me to continue having this relationship with the International Institute of Applied System Analysis and Research. So what happens is actually research generates new knowledge, and this new knowledge brings the opportunity to come up with ideas that could fit into the policy debate, and also allow me to put my previous experience in the Commission in the service of the Forum in a manner that is a little bit more open, if I say, with less constraints than before.
I mean, I know you have deep understanding, 30 years in the European Commission as Director of Strategy Simplification. Big word, you know, a difficult thing in Brussels, perhaps, simplification.
Question was dropped the last year.
Was it?
Not by accident, actually.
But I wonder I know you've also lived in the US, and I wonder when you look at what we might call the rules-based international order being replaced with might is right, when we look at the backward steps that are potentially being made in the protectionist trade war that's coming in, how far might that complicate or slow implementing the transition that we're talking about, in your view?
Well, clearly it's going to have an impact, for one thing, on prices. It's going to have an impact on trade flows that, in a manner that we don't know yet, because we don't know how others are going to react to that. But I think at the end of the day, we need to be clear that we stick to long-term objectives that we have, which are driven by the problems we have to resolve. So the problems we have to resolve is how do we adapt to climate change? What measures do we take to mitigate the impacts of climate change, and also how we do that in a manner that takes into account the fact that we need to be based on an agricultural sector that is both economically and environmentally viable, and this is not going to go away. Of course, we have seen trade wars in the past. In my view, the European agricultural and agri-food system has proven its resilience. We tend to underestimate how innovative and how strong the system is. I think it will provide one more opportunity to solve that.
The how to do this, which you touch on, is of course it's a very big question, but it is one of the questions that the Forum does focus on. What, in that context, was your main message, your main focus when you spoke on the panel earlier today?
My main message is that we have to make it simple, but clearly more targeted. I think we have forgotten to start our policy design from the basics of what a farm is doing in order to be able to lead the farmers to change what we want them to change. And what farmers are doing is they do not distinguish the economic and environmental aspects of their activity. They do it in parallel, in tandem, jointly. In the policy design, we have different things for the economic and different things for the environmental aspect. So my experience of all these years has led me to think that now it is mature to bring the different types of measures we have around the economic and environmental aspects into one. Instead of looking at the very long list of indicators, there are limited indicators around soil that are available that could help us shift from prescription to performance. And we have to do it also in a manner that takes into account the fact that soil doesn't change overnight. So you need to allow this flexibility to farmers to make the adjustment, but of course then measure what they have done, not in absolute terms, but in relative terms with respect to other farmers in the same region with similar characteristics have done.
So you feel that policy must follow the real world, but the CAP hasn't been very good at that over the years. This is not easy.
At points and at moments, the CAP has been. I mean, it's not by accident that in all major agriculture in the world, the European agriculture is the only one that managed to reduce emissions. while at the same time increasing not only the quantity of output, but the value. And we see it also in the agro-food trade that our sector is doing well. But of course, there is always a possibility to do things much better, and it's also a possibility to look back and see what you have not done well. And what we clearly have not done well is we don't distribute payments in a manner that it's logical today. It was logical when we did it in the past. And there is still the need to increase the environmental delivery of what we're doing. So if we look at these two things, naturally you have to see what type of adjustments we have to do. But we shouldn't minimize the achievements we had, but we shouldn't turn a blind eye on the things that are not working.
And a thought on the vision paper that came out a couple of months ago now, and how much that might move forward. Competitiveness seemed to be featured more than a thread of sustainability going through, and I wonder what your view of that is.
Well, I wouldn't say that sustainability is not. Sustainable productivity is absent. Sustainability appears and competitiveness appears. Now, first of all, having been there myself, know how much effort my former colleagues put in producing that, but I also know that this is a process that reflects different balances within the Commission. What I find extremely positive in the document is the fact that it talks about the agricultural sector as a strategic sector. So it focuses exactly on what the sector is not only going to possibly contribute in the future, but what it has done already. And the positive notes are stronger than the negative ones. And that's positive. It's a necessary message. I think also it covers many areas that we need to address and we need to develop action. What I didn't see is a clear prioritization of main things that you know that if you solve this, you have multiplier effects and you manage to do others. You cannot open all the fronts at the same time. And as always happens in communications like that, you have the odd things there that you say, where did this come from? What I found was, where did this come from, is this not sell below the cost of production, which in my view means absolutely nothing, because you have to define what's the cost of production. Is it average? It is marginal? You have any measures to address it or not? But that's, at the end of the day, I think this is going to be a minor detail. The most important element, in my view, is the need to prioritize so that at least we start discussing what exactly it means in more concrete terms. And I hope to see also a very solid impact assessment for which DG Agri had a very long tradition.
Well, speaking of concrete terms, of course, the Forum does work towards that. So thank you very much for your voice in the Forum today and your continued support and expertise and advice. And thank you very much for speaking to us.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.